I'll never forget that Sunday morning, because in less than a minute my family's life went from coffee and sunshine to a full-blown siege. I was standing in the kitchen with a mug in my hand when the low rumble started, too heavy for a delivery truck, too fast for anything normal. Before I could even put my cup down, a white work truck barreled up our driveway and slammed through my garage door like it was made of paper. The whole house shook, glass rattled, my mug smashed on the floor. For one heartbeat, there was silence. Then two men stepped out, not dazed, not apologetic, but deliberate, like they'd just punched a time clock. Black t-shirts with HOA across the chest batons in their hands, and the kind of smirks that said they owned the place. My name's Daniel Reed. My wife is Sarah, the sharpest woman I know, and our 13-year-old son is Ethan, quiet but steady, already more disciplined than I was at his age. We had bought this place because it was free of homeowners associations. We wanted peace, privacy, the kind of freedom where your mailbox color wasn't someone else's business. And now here were two goons claiming final compliance reading violations about paint colors and landscaping that had nothing to do with us. I cracked the door chain and told them they had the wrong house. The big one leaned close, hot breath hitting my cheek, and growled, "Open up, Reed, or we make our own door." That's when the reality hit me. This wasn't a mistake. This was an attack. Sarah, calm as ice, whispered from behind me, "Check the phones." I did. Dead. No service bars, no landline dial tone. We were cut off. A cold dread sank into me until Sarah spotted something out the front window. Near the mailbox, tucked into the bushes, was a little black box with an antenna blinking green. A cell jammer. Someone had planted it to trap us in silence. This wasn't intimidation anymore. It was coordinated, and that changed everything. She didn't flinch. She said, "They left evidence. That's their mistake." While I was still processing, Ethan moved. He didn't cry, didn't panic. He pulled on a tactical vest I'd bought him for the shooting range and held his AK pattern rifle at a low ready position, muzzle down, finger off the trigger. He wasn't playing soldier. He was steady, disciplined, eyes clear. Seeing my son take that stance nearly broke me, but it also burned away my fear. These men had forced him into this. Whatever happened next, they had started it. We needed more than resolve, we needed proof. Our doorbell cam was already recording, but Sarah pointed to the dusty drone sitting on the bookshelf, a Christmas toy we'd barely used. "Launch it from upstairs," she said. Ethan's eyes lit up. He slid it out of his bedroom window, climbed it high above the trees, and suddenly we had an eye in the sky. The drone feed showed the truck jammed in the garage, the two thugs prying at my interior door, one of them glancing at his phone. On the screen, with a little sunlight glare, Sarah froze, the frame zoomed in, tweaked the contrast, and the words appeared. A text message. 3 words. Final compliance. That was the order, straight from whoever was pulling the strings. I knew who it was. Across the ridge, a high-end development called Brookhaven Meadows had a notorious HOA president named Valerie Cross. She'd sent us a letter months ago claiming her authority extended to adjacent properties. I'd laughed, sent a certified rebuttal, and thought that was the end of it. But now, as a black SUV pulled into my driveway and idled behind the white truck, I didn't have to guess who was inside. Valerie was here, watching her hired thugs try to break us down. I had to get help, so I slipped out the back fence and sprinted to my neighbor Tom's house. Tom's a retired engineer, a ham radio nut whose backyard looks like NASA in the 70s. I gave him the 30-second version truck baton's jammer-cut lines, and he didn't hesitate. He keyed up his rig, and within a minute, the county sheriff's dispatch was answering. Units inbound, ETA 6 to 8 minutes. 6 to 8 minutes felt like forever, but at least the silence was broken. Tom shoved a handheld radio into my palm, winked, and said, "Get home safe. When I slipped back in, Sarah and Ethan were still at their posts. The crowbar pounding in the garage had stopped, replaced by whispers on the drone feed. The thugs had gotten new orders, more aggressive. Ethan didn't look away from the hallway. "They're gonna try again," he said softly. He wasn't wrong. The text message had lit a fire under them. My knuckles were white around the rifle he'd handed me, not raised, but ready. I'm no soldier, I sell software for a living. But in that moment, I knew exactly how far I was willing to go to protect my family. As far as I had to. Then faint at first came the sweetest sound I've ever heard, sirens climbing fast. The thugs froze, panic flashing across their faces on the drone feed. They weren't paid for a shootout with deputies. They dropped their tools, scrambled for their truck, and tore it out of the wrecked garage just as the first cruiser crested the hill. Stop sticks hissed their tires flat. Another unit boxed in the black SUV, and within minutes it was over. The enforcers sprawled on the ground in cuffs, their batons bagged for evidence, and finally the SUV door opened. Valerie Cross stepped out in her white pantsuit, hair-perfect eyes full of outrage. "This is a misunderstanding," she hissed. "They work for me." The sergeant just shook his head. "Ma'am, driving a truck through a man's garage isn't enforcement. It's a felony. Cuff her." Sarah handed over the laptop with the drone footage, the doorbell recordings, the screenshot of Valerie's text. The deputies even found the jammer still blinking by the mailbox. It was airtight. Valerie's face drained as the cuffs clicked, and just then 2 other board members from her HOA pulled up, clearly summoned to watch her victory. Instead, they got front-row seats to her downfall. They stammered, denied knowing anything, threw her under the bus right there on the roadside. Her little empire collapsed in a heartbeat. The weeks after felt like waking up from a bad dream. Valerie took a plea: conspiracy, assault, illegal jamming device. She avoided prison, but lost everything that mattered to her, including her throne over Brookhaven. Insurance paid for the garage rebuild, and each nail I hammered back into place felt like reclaiming something they'd tried to take. Ethan went back to being a 13-year-old kid, but with a new steadiness in his eyes. We talked about anger duty, the heavy weight of holding that rifle. He understood, and I knew he'd carried himself with more grace than most grown men would have. When the new garage was done, I carved a cedar sign and hung it at the end of our drive. It doesn't say our name, doesn't list an address. It says, "We don't start fights. We finish them by law, by honor, by family." It's not a threat. It's a promise. And every time I see it, I remember that day, how fear turned into resolve, how a petty tyrant thought she could bend us, and how a family stood together and proved her wrong. So now I'll ask you, what would you have done if 2 so-called enforcers rammed your home and cut you off from the world? Would you stand your ground, or would you comply just to make it stop? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Tell me where you stand on justice, on family, on what it means to call a place your castle. And don't forget to share this story, because sometimes the only way to keep bullies from winning is to shine a light on exactly how far they'll go and how far we'll go to stop them.